All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management webinar series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen. I am the Program Manager for the Recycling Market Center and will serve as your moderator today. Before we get started, we would like to extend a special thanks to Bob Hollis of the Mobius Network for providing the webinar management software for this series, and Savannah Batowski of the National Recycling Coalition for assisting the RMC with webinar promotion and technical support. Today's webinar will discuss connecting higher education to the sustainable materials management industry. Our presenters today are Jack DeBell and Mark Lichtenstein, who I'll introduce in a moment. Following the presentation, we will conduct a question and answer session. If you have a question or comment, please use the GoToWebinar dialog box located in the control panel on your screen. You may also use the dialog box to request assistance if you're experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that an edited version of the webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on the National Recycling Coalition and PA Recycling Market Center websites. The presentation slides will also be forwarded to all attendees, but we also have on the upload feature on your control panel the presenter bios. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters. Jack DeBell and Mark Lichtenstein, and as I said, the bios are in the handout, so we're going to dispense of reading the bios at this point. So Mark and Jack, if you're ready, you can get started.
Thanks, Wayne. This is Jack DeBell, folks. Good morning or good day to you. I'm sitting in my office here in Boulder, Colorado, at the University of Colorado campus, and it's a pleasure to be tag teaming with my friend and colleague, Mark Lichtenstein. How you doing today, Mark?
Great, Jack. I feel the same, and I'm sitting here in Syracuse, New York, in my office at the College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we thought that we would do a co-presentation off of this one PowerPoint with yours truly doing the play-by-play and Mark adding some commentary through the presentation. So Mark, chime in as you will. I also wanted to thank Wayne Bowen and the good folks at the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My colleague or the NRC board member, Bob Bailone, has been very gracious in extending this opportunity, and thanks again to Bob and Savannah for producing what you're about to see here today. I have a series of slides, and I'll be toggling back and forth real time, so you can see some of the forms and website pages that we've put together for you folks to take advantage of today. So for the agenda, I thought we would start with a brief introduction to the Campus Council for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And then this pesky control panel, let me get it out of the way. About a 10 or 15 minute overview of a survey that has been conducted on kind of a status report on the operational, managerial, promotional aspects of sustainable materials management on campus. And then we'll, as I mentioned, toggle over to the Campus Council website so we could walk you through the different projects and services that we offer, and then how you could take advantage of them. In the questions and answers, if you wouldn't mind making a note of the page number, if you'll see it appear at the bottom of each page in a small font, I'm afraid, and then post any questions to Wayne and maybe make it with the slide number so we can, as we get into questions and answers, and especially how we could connect you to what we're doing, you may help by referencing the slide in case we need to go back to that. And then finally, I wanted to spend some time sharing with you the opportunities throughout the presentation that you could take advantage of. So you'll see this green starburst through the presentation. You may want to make a note of that, or certainly in the presentation that you can download, make some notes in that as well. So the Campus Council is something that was established, reestablished by the NRC several years ago. the NRC has a long history of involvement with higher education, starting with a scholarship endowment that Murray J. Fox created a number of years ago. The Campus Council still prioritizes this as one of the key projects. These are the last couple of years of scholarship award winners. On the lower right, you'll see for students from New Orleans area colleges and universities that were awarded a $1,500 tuition scholarship, complimentary registration to the Resource Recycling Conference, and a one-year membership to both the NRC as well as an emerging leaders network that has been created for past alumni and past scholarship winners. In the upper left-hand corner are the 4 scholarship recipients that received those benefits as well just recently in Minneapolis, where we awarded students at 3 colleges and universities in the Twin Cities area. On the left is the NRC president, by the way, Bob Geddert, who also recognizes the importance of connecting higher education with the recycling and solid sustainable materials management industry. So in addition to the Murray Fox Scholarship, another key function of the Campus Council is to improve collaboration with other higher education institutions and then those organizations that pertain to our industry. Back in 2015 at College Park, Maryland, there was, some of you may have even attended the National Sustainable Materials Management Summit, where a campus white paper was adopted after much circulation and discussion, both from individual opinion leaders and campus coordinators, as well as some of the campus organizations in the country that pertain to recycling. So there's 10 priorities. The ones that I've highlighted here are the ones that the Campus Council really does focus on. There is some complementarity among the different organizations that I'll cover in a few moments, but those 5 or so highlighted areas really are the priorities that we all can agree on that the Campus Council is rolling up its sleeves for. So the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, or ASHE, boy, they shortened that acronym at one point. They really are perhaps the umbrella group, not just of sustainable materials management, zero waste, campus recycling, but a whole host of environmental sustainability initiatives that are really proliferating around the nation's 4,000 or so colleges and universities. CURC, or the College and University Recycling Council, is very active and does a fantastic job facilitating progress among campus recycling coordinators primarily. CURC also manages the National Recyclemania competition and also plays a key role in the EPA's Game Day Challenge. They host a series of monthly webinars and a very active group. PLAN is another group that you may not have heard of. It's the Post-Landfill Action Network. I help advise them in my capacity with the NRC. PLAN is a very active group also, with a conference coming up in the next couple of months. In my assessment, they do very effective outreach to student groups on campus and help mobilize clubs and student organizations in a variety of ways. A very active group as well. U.S. Green Building Council has acquired or merged with the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, which has created a technical committee for collegiate contacts and campuses around the country. I also, in my capacity on the NRC Campus Council, liaison to this group, which is having a very active agenda and setting its sights on the Green Build Conference in Boston in November, where there'll be a workshop hosted at Harvard University. This group is, in my assessment, really has its hands full with significant challenges around strengthening LEED standards for building codes and other LEED certification that does a better job considering materials management, recycled content, building products, and so on. So I'm really appreciative of U.S. Green Building Council to acknowledge the important role of colleges and universities in doing the research around strengthening building codes and standards and issuing a new version of LEED that will help us all, hopefully. And then, of course, the Campus Council, the group that I currently manage with an advisory board. We put an annual report together, and we'll cover that in more detail in a moment.
Jack?
The point, yes, Mark?
Yeah, I just want to add something here on ASHE. You're right, the acronym is a little bit shorter than it used to be, but a long name. For those who might not know, they do a lot of things, but one of the core things they do is the STARS system, which is the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System that last I checked, over 900 institutions were participating in, mostly North America, but elsewhere in addition. I suggest if you're not familiar with that, that's a one thing that you do get familiar with. They have a whole section on materials management, and they're emphasizing that more. And Jack's, one of the things I was thinking about is the National Recycling Coalition may want to work closer with them to help advise on the materials management section. I think it's fairly comprehensive, but probably could use our expertise and those of folks on this webinar. So I think if anybody's interested in that, they should let us know. And the other two things I wanted to add here, groups that are paying more attention to materials management, and it's mostly in the buildings realm, is the Living Building Challenge from the Pacific Northwest, and a new effort here, not new, but pretty much from Central New York, the Ecological Performance Standards process. So if anybody's interested in those, I didn't intend to go into those in detail, but if you're interested in those, you can reach out and we can help you learn more about both of those.
Very good, Mark. Great additions. If we have time, I actually have this University of Colorado's recent STARS report. We ranked gold. Unfortunately, there are a growing number of schools that are reaching platinum, and that you're right, Mark. That's a fantastic set of metrics and tools to report on. In addition to collaborating with other groups, we have this national survey underway for campus zero waste management. I thought I'd take a few minutes to summarize the initial results of that survey, the URL of which we'll have available for you. Currently, we've got a good 25 or so responses from professionals or campus coordinators that have a pretty deep level of understanding of the operational, financial, promotional, academic aspects of their programs. So this survey is fairly restricted to those colleagues of ours that are really running the show on their campus. And here's what we're seeing. The majority of them, of the schools reporting, about half of them are able to divert 40 to 60% of their material stream. The metrics that they're reporting, and Mark will make sure that STARS is a series of metrics that schools will be able to report on, and we'll promote that. But you can see that most schools are reporting diversion rates followed closely by the greenhouse gas emission reductions. Increasingly, greenhouse gas and the sustainability efforts focus on climate change, and we're seeing a lot more reporting through, for instance, the EPA WARM model on greenhouse gas reduction through sustainable materials management, which research is showing is very effective dollar per dollar compared to other sustainability initiatives like HVAC systems, alternative transportation, even renewable energy sources on a metric ton basis of carbon removed. So schools are hip to that, and they're beginning to report primarily through STARS and other mechanisms like the EPA WARM model. Interestingly, very few schools, about 20% or so, are reporting on job creation, which is an increasingly important metric. So the red column are those schools that rank these different policy initiatives as a high priority. The blue column is the schools that are actually doing them or having established those. You can see that a campus zero waste goal is some of the highest priority of our colleagues, yet it's something that is in a fairly short supply. Only about 20% of those schools reporting actually have a zero waste goal. Other big disparities are big gap between those who think established principles or guidebooks for zero waste policies and programs on campus are a priority, but a very small percentage of them actually have them. Same is true for soft drink contract reform, mandated recycling purchasing policy, or in fact, in this case, mandated recycling ordinances on campus. A growing number of schools are approaching them, and even more, I think that's high priority. So it's a quick snapshot of what schools' policies are looking like. So I had mentioned earlier that about 20% of schools report having a zero waste policy or plan, but importantly, a good third of schools note that they're under development if they don't actually have one. So that's encouraging. By the way, this survey is based on a consultant approach developed by experts in the zero waste field. It's a sequential consulting approach that we commonly use at colleges and universities who are looking to get more ambitious with zero waste planning. Financial disincentives that should be avoided on campus. You can see that even though many schools think it's a high priority to prohibit or discourage non-recyclable packaging, very few schools, including ours, are doing that. You can also see that probably one of the biggest financial programs that disincent waste generation is discouraging unlimited printing. In fact, at the ASHE conference next month in San Antonio, there'll be a separate workshop that we'll be speaking on the different ways that campus printing in its current unlimited capacity in many schools is really driving up consumption rates. Whereas there are a lot of opportunities for schools to reduce the amount of printing through policies or through other mechanisms, contractual mechanisms predominantly. What financial incentives are needed? You can see there's not many being offered. About 20% of the schools are offering discounts for their reusable mugs or eatingware. Only about 10% of the schools polled have minimum post-content standards for purchasing. You can see that there's a lot of financial incentives that are judged to be a high priority, but really aren't getting much traction on college campuses, or at least those that we're polling. When it gets to recovering hard or unconventionally recycled materials, you can see that there are a lot of schools, about 3/4 of them, that are collecting things like toner cartridges, inkjets, computers and electronics, shredded paper, and particularly end-of-year move-out, books, clothing, and appliances. But you'll also see that there's pretty high priority placed on materials like paper towels, which a lot of schools are grappling with by reducing their generation with electric hand dryers, for instance, or in our case at the University of Colorado in Boulder, actually composting them in the restrooms, since that's really the only room that custodians are able to clean every day, or the bathrooms. Has a certain synergy, if you will, in what we consume at our desk side and taking those compostables along with paper towels down to the restroom that get those composted. A growing number of schools are doing that.
Jack, do you know of any research out there, life cycle analysis on the use of electric dryers versus unbleached paper?
Yeah, I've seen studies that unfortunately aren't very conclusive. I do know that there's been rapid progress in the technology and energy consumption decreases in hand dryers. Whether or not they actually pay for themselves over time, I'm not convinced that they do. There's also a consumer preference that tends to lean towards paper towels, although I think those are being replaced, or those are changing with these new air dryers, these air blades, if you will.
One of the
What's your take on that, Mark? Do you see something conclusive on LCAs for paper towels versus hand dryers?
I'm just not aware of any research out there. There's probably somebody on this webinar that is, so I would be interested in that. I can only go from a gut feeling on this, and my preferences to the craft or the unbleached paper towels, especially after I saw your system. And I would suggest, if anybody hasn't been to Boulder and University of Colorado, I know you're not doing this in all your bathrooms, but it seemed like a very efficient system you have for collecting the paper towels in the bathrooms and then including it with your organic material for composting. And so I'm leaning that way, unless somebody can make an argument that from a life cycle analysis standpoint, that isn't the best option.
I know that there's been some postings on Recycle, which is a restricted listserv that's very active among campus coordinators. For those of you on the call or in the conference that are campus coordinators, highly encourage you to become members or subscribe to the Recycle listserv. And Mark, I'm making a note to research that, because I did see some correspondence on that recently.
Jack got a comment here that the attendee says there are lots of white papers, but you have to worry about bacteria using the dryers.
Oh, so. Yeah, kind of have that feeling myself, but I try not to let my personal bias get in the way of a good LCA. Finally, let's take a look at applied academics, which I'd like to begin transitioning the presentation towards, since that really is the focus area predominantly of the campus council. You can see that there's high priority in a lot of areas, and this is the range of types of activities that a lot of schools are employing, from certification and training to, of course, classwork, course topics, but also service learning, like volunteer opportunities, work study jobs on campus, and something that we'll be including here in a moment, how to get more students involved in internships or making a difference with their degree. So that's a quick snapshot of some of the things that schools are doing based on that kind of consulting approach of how we plan for zero waste on a college campus. Let me turn now to a greater focus on how we make better connections between higher education and the sustainable materials management industry. And we're introducing here what we call the Zero Waste Incubator. And there are several different activities or projects that my interns here at the university are doing a great job of searching and posting content that is current, credible, concise, really complementary or focused on sustainable materials management, because there's a lot of variety, a lot of very broad scope in these topics. So finding just those resources that are focused on sustainable materials management is something that the interns have been working really hard on. Let's cover some of the things on academic and professional development by going online to the Campus Council website and taking a look at some of the materials that are available to you on this site. As I mentioned, many of these materials are being collected by CU interns, so we're doing it in collaboration with the Campus Council. Here you can see just a sense of the organizations and directories that don't necessarily just pertain to colleges and universities. There's directories of industry groups and state agencies and zero waste organizations. State agencies, for instance, are hyperlinked, as you see here, virtually every state that the interns were able to find. one example of the curricular materials and so on. Another aspect of the professional development academic resources that both students, their faculty can use in improving their coursework or academics, but also are handy resources for those people not on college campuses to bookmark, are pages around best practices. And so you can get a sense here of the variety of categories that the students have been able to gather information on. Picking one in particular, you can see what we've been able to compile for legislation and policy or special events, construction and demolition, and so on. So for those of you who haven't seen this logo, for instance, that's the original recycling Mobius. Mark, you may remember this, designed years ago by a college student in a national competition. For me, it's a good example of how students can use their academic work to help the industry directly.
I'd be interested in the story behind how it typically gets flipped the other way around. I'm sure there's somebody on the call that knows the story behind that.
So yeah, this is an opportunity for the audience to contribute resources. There'll be websites at the end where we're gathering those kinds of current, credible, concise resources and making them available. So please contribute yours along these lines, and we're happy to take a look at those and put them out for the greater good. The Campus Council also supports the National Standard Certification Board of the National Recycling Coalition by providing these kinds of training program development resources. The NRC's Standard Certification Board does not provide training to individuals, but it instead accredits states training programs. That's an important distinction. So to date, the NRC has accredited programs from New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Pennsylvania. I might be missing a couple, Mark. But these resources here will help you as a state recycling organization, for instance, design training programs of your own that you can offer through your state conferences, for instance. So would encourage you to pursue and offer professional development and use these resources to do that. So let's take a look at another service or project on speakers and tours. This is a way for you professionals in the audience to make some direct benefit to your area campuses. This is, for instance, a directory of the guest speakers that our interns have recruited so far. And you can see, for instance, this speaker from the Northeast Recycling Council up in Vermont has some contact information. She lists the keywords that she's able to address, how much travel distance she's willing to incur, and whether or not an honoraria or travel stipend might be required. So for those of you professionals out there, I would certainly encourage you to sign up and become a speaker or host a tour of your facility. There's a simple form that links on our website to apply to be a speaker, and also a simple form on hosting a tour of your facilities. It's a really great way. I don't know about your teaching experience, Mark, but getting students out of the classroom and to area sustainable materials management facilities is a great way to augment their classwork.
Jack, I agree on that. And for the group, I teach a class in community planning and sustainability here, and I focus a number of sessions on SMM because in addition to the importance of sustainable materials management that we're all aware of as experts in this field, it is an excellent proxy for sustainability and resiliency in general. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, it's a nexus of a number of issues: climate change, water, other air pollution issues, environmental justice, opportunity for job creation. You all know, I mean, there are experts on this webinar, but I think it's important for us. I was in a meeting yesterday to realize that we haven't done a good enough job, I think, in academia and elsewhere in making that connection of sustainable materials management to these other, what we would call wicked problems or global problems. And we can do that. Climate change is the obvious one, but there are others as well, such as water that I mentioned. So it's a great proxy, and those of us who are in positions in academia, I think we should be, I mean, I'm a little biased because this is my field, SMM, but I think we should be promoting it and communicating it more effectively as a proxy for broader sustainability and resiliency issues.
I agree. So there are links for you to fill out to be a guest speaker or to host a tour on your of your facilities. Another aspect of the incubator is intern recruitment and referral, which is a great way of enabling students to assist your organization at low cost, oftentimes with high degrees of empiricism, responsibility. So it works well both for students and the host organization. Here again, there's just a simple one-page internship application that's available from the campus council site. This is all it takes to begin the process of describing what kind of duties you might need help with, what majors or qualifications you would desire, what the start and end date is, and whether or not, for instance, the internship is paid or unpaid. It's important to note that we don't want our students from campus just licking and sticking envelopes, but we challenge those of you in the audience off campus who are looking at interns to develop something rigorous that they can really roll up their sleeves and apply their academics to. So please recruit an intern if you're in that position. Finally, the project around applied research and development is an area that is just beginning to get some momentum. The ability of schools to apply their academics in the case of, for instance, the University of Florida, which just won the NRC's Outstanding Higher Education Award, is really an important attribute of campus recycling right now. The University of Florida is just doing some outstanding work bridging town and gown issues. For instance, their Hinckley Center's research program tests innovative, low-cost, environmentally sound methods and strategies for managing all of Florida's solid and hazardous waste. They also transfer research results to the public and private sectors for Florida's waste management problems. They also, of course, run the TRIO Center, which is the Training, Research, and Education for Environmental Occupations Center. They've done that since the 40s, funded through the state solid and hazardous waste bills that they've created. So just an example of some of the outstanding work that students and faculty and staff at the University of Florida are doing for the taxpayers of their state. Last year's winner, I should note, is a community college in Kansas. Johnson Community College is also a great example that I'd like to highlight of bridging the town and gown. Their composting center, for instance, serves the Mid-America Regional Council by training off-campus composting employees with equipment that the campus has purchased. It's also a great launching pad or springboard, if you will. I don't know, Mark, if you have examples of this. I'm sure you do, of qualified students cutting their teeth on campus programs, going out and making a difference in the industry. Johnson Community College is a farm team, if you will, for many of the professionals in that state.
Yeah, I mean, this is a key area. Again, those academic people on the webinar know this, that institutions have to be positioning themselves for more service and experiential learning opportunities for students. This is what students and prospective students are demanding even more than they have in the past. So you see a big movement with many institutions trying to provide these opportunities, whether they're internships or other literally hands-on experiences like this. So this is definitely the trend, and you'll see more colleges like Johnson Community College doing this in the future.
We began a survey that I would encourage those of you on campus that are doing SMM academic work to participate in. The purpose of this survey is to identify schools out there that are conducting this kind of research and then determine whether or not they're interested and able to collaborate both amongst ourselves as well as with the private and public sectors. There are some early results to share about how schools are approaching this. So encourage you to take that survey if you're on a college campus. The following slides show that majority of schools, almost all of them are using, well, all of them are using unpaid internships and off-campus field trips to help advance SMM research. But they're also using coursework, capstone courses, paid internships, and so on to get the job done. They're predominantly relying on off-campus sources of funding, as this graph shows, both in off-campus grants and in sponsorship, which would like to appeal to the audience of those off-campus in the private or public sectors that are looking to get low-cost, credible work done to advance their company or organization to consider contacting area colleges and universities. The Campus Council facilitates that to a large extent. We have a growing number of schools. We have a good sense of what research topics they focus on, of course, where they are geographically, and we could pair them up to those of you off campus who are looking to get sponsored research performed. And some of the obstacles that we're facing highlight that is that schools are actually having difficulty accessing off-campus groups that are interested in sponsoring research. I see two ships passing in the night here, so to speak, and it's something that the Campus Council is going to be addressing more and more. Of course, funding is needed, as the previous slide showed, but also some of the things that campuses are needing are better contact with people off campus in the industry, as well as what I'm seeing is that a lack of qualified faculty. I'm really disappointed, and Mark, I don't know if you can lament on this also, the course materials that we as faculty oftentimes have access to. We're on our own to develop coursework or to stay abreast of the industry. So I think getting faculty better prepared to teach the students of tomorrow is an important challenge of ours.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I would suggest you'll see more and more adjuncts in this area like myself. Those of you who are not teaching and are on the call and would consider yourself SMM experts should try to reach out maybe to your local institutions and see if there's a willingness for you to do some kind of visiting instructor role, because I think there is a need, and it's probably going to be met initially by practitioners in the field while we start to develop more of an academic track. And on that note, we're experimenting here maybe in the next year or so with a 12-credit graduate program in sustainable materials management. I know we're not the first, and it would be interesting to know more about other institutions out there that have programs like this, but I think we need to start to develop that pipeline of faculty that are focused on this and researchers that are focused on this.
Yeah, agreed. So certainly encourage those of you faculty members to take this survey, which is available on the Campus Council page. We'll report back to those of you who are interested in receiving those results and then share it with our colleagues off campus. Thanks, good suggestions, Mark. So not only are we studying how schools can do a better job applying their academics, we've also just begun studying what the industry needs. So we have a brief survey for those of you off campus to contribute information on where you see your needs to develop your business or your organization. So this survey actually maps to the industry sectors from the NAIC codes. So there's 29 categories that we've identified, or 27 with a couple of others categories that we think might have a bearing on sustainable materials management, either directly if you're a recycling company, or indirectly if you're involved in restaurants or property management or healthcare. So if you're in those sectors, we challenge you to challenge us in academia to give us research topics that we can help your group with. Let me highlight one here, if I still have it up on the screen, since I just came across it last night in preparing this. It's the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, which by this Friday is calling for, is offering waste reduction grants for communities that are taking on innovative projects that really reduce or reuse the amount of materials. So this is an example of the kind of challenge that I would hope you folks off campus on the call are making sure that college campuses in your area are aware of. I know, Mark, you and I have talked just recently about challenging the universities that work with in construction and demolition capacity to provide some guidance to groups like the Army Corps of Engineers to improve best practices for handling disaster debris. You know, it's a very current topic that we have some expertise on that we'd like to make available to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real-time issue. As we talk right now, we have another hurricane bearing down on the Caribbean, and NRC formed a disaster debris task force a couple of weeks ago at the conference in Minneapolis. We've had a few meetings. We formed it mainly to deal with issues related to Hurricane Harvey, and then Irma hit, and now Maria is there. I'm sure you all see the devastation. It's immense. So a number of us, maybe some of you on this call, have been trying to assist the U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, probably Puerto Rico now as well. It looks like Puerto Rico is right in the track of Maria. These are real-time issues, disaster debris management, and the way the Corps of Engineers and the way FEMA has dealt with this in the past is not necessarily sustainable. The goal is to get the communities opened up as fast as possible. So how do we meet that need while also addressing the security and safety needs of people first and foremost, but try to manage the debris in a sustainable way? So policy is needed, but also other types of research in addition to just being able to make some rapid decisions on this. So if people are interested in this, we have people struggling with this issue right now on all of those places in Florida and Texas as well.
Very good. So I would encourage you, those of you who are in the position to consider sponsoring applied research by contacting us and giving us a sense of the kind of research you need, what schools around the country you need it from, and let us activate our network of colleges and universities that might be able to perform that for you. So to begin concluding then, the way many of us see better connecting higher education and the industry is a win-win approach. It's for those off campus, it's great exposure for your organization. If you're coming on campus, being a guest lecturer or hosting faculty and their classes on your tours, for instance. But it's also a great asset for your area faculty. Maybe it's your alma mater who you're concerned with teaching better courses. Your help off campus could help improve the courses that faculty offer in your area. But it's also a way of energizing your program, whether it's with an internship or applied research, getting students to use their creative energies and their talents, especially online, to help energize your program. Along the way, we're seeing that off-campus companies and organizations have much greater access to the campus community, whether it's in working with their campus recycling operation or reuse facility, offering goods and services competitively bid to the campus. These are some of the benefits of collaborating more closely with the campus. And of course, I don't think it can be said enough that there is a great new generation coming up of eager students who are looking to make a difference with their degree, apply their academics, and get into the profession. So here's probably the simplest way for those of you on the call who are interested in taking advantage of the Campus Council to get involved. And I'll just take you online real quick to show you this quick survey. It's not at all daunting. You should be able to complete it in a few minutes. This is the simple several question interest survey. You can complete what role you have in the industry, whether you're on campus or off campus. And then here's just a short list of ways that you can help, whether, as I mentioned, hosting a tour of the operation, being a speaker, recommending other speakers from your organization, sponsoring an applied research project, funding scholarships, and so on. So a very simple one-page survey that'll help you get connected to taking advantage of the many services that I hope I've been able to present at least partially today. So let's begin some questions. Wayne, if you have any, this would be a good time to field them and to engage them in some discussion. We may conclude a little early today, I notice. But Mark, do you have first any concluding remarks you want to make, maybe to begin some discussion or field some questions among the audience?
Yeah, just a few more building on the last comments about disaster debris. I see some other areas where we need more attention from academia in particular, and some of this is coming from a meeting I had this week with a local solid waste authority and our state agency here in New York State that kind of governs solid waste and SMM, our Department of Environmental Conservation. Some of those people might even be on the call, but it was helpful to participate in that conversation because here are some local practitioners identifying to me what needs they have from academia. And I'm just going to give you a few of those, and this is by no means a comprehensive list. And it's augmented by some conversations I had with others as well. But new materials development. So again, sustainable materials management, we tend to focus on those end of pipe solutions a lot, recycling, composting, and so on. But more effort needs to be put towards the development of new materials, designed for environment, designed for recycling, those type of things. We have a lot of academic institutions that are playing in that area, including our own. But we see a need to accelerate activity in that area. In particular, just to deal with the marine debris issue, which is a huge issue that's growing in complexity and scope. So that's an area, new materials. I mentioned disaster debris, that's certainly a big one. Agricultural debris, key particularly plastics, but not just plastics, other types of ag waste. Glass, we all know glass in many areas is a challenge. This was one of the ones highlighted the other day by the group that I met with. So what else can we be doing in the realm of research for glass options? And again, that's very situational, very regional, but it is an area that people are asking for help. Practitioners are asking for help. Others that we're aware of, everybody on the call is aware of tires, electronics. So they still tend to be these generally difficult items to deal with and have been for many years. What else can academia do to assist in those areas? And then the policy. Don't mean to just be focusing on the technical or the pure science side of the equation. Academia can play a much larger role too with looking at new policy initiatives and new financing models. Financing models that work differently than the old models that have been in place for a long time. And there's a lot of effort going on out there right now by a number of NGOs and others. But what role can academia play in that area is important. And LCA is part of that. And then also market development. This is key, particularly as we're dealing with the National Sword Initiative from China. Is this an opportunity? I pose that as a rhetorical question. I think the NRC sees this as an opportunity. Others, like the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, sees this. They're concerned about this, but also see it as an opportunity. What can we do, if anything, to reinvigorate manufacturing, market development, stateside, and what role can academia play with that? And to that end, here in New York, we're talking about what can we do at the state level to develop a new SMM initiative at the state level, partnering with academia in New York. So if there are institutional reps here from New York organizations, be interested to talk to you, because we're in some initial stages of talking about what New York can do, and maybe that's something that could be more of a national effort. Jack, you and I talked about this, connecting like state level SMM initiatives at the policy level with New York and Colorado and others. So those are just some issues that I've been thinking about and talking to people about, that I'm attempting to see how my college and other peers can help practitioners with these challenges.
Sounds like we still have a lot of work to do. We've come a long way together, and then you have certainly noticed a groundswell of interest on college campuses. I look forward to taking the next steps so we can actually mobilize students to apply their academics and really address some of these issues that you're pointing out. Wayne, do we at this point have any topics for discussion or questions from the audience?
Yes, we do have several questions and comments. And again, if you do have a question or comment, please use the go to webinar dialog box. So someone gave us a comment on the, I told you about the paper studies. I sent everybody a link that this person provided me, and some could not make the connection, but that study came from MIT. So if you just Google MIT paper LCA study, you should be able to get to that document. And also there's some requests for some URL links. One was for the listserv that I believe you mentioned, Jack, earlier in the presentation, and then the link to the SurveyMonkey link. I can provide those also when I email everybody the slides to the presentation. So here's some questions early on concerning the STARS program. Do the program results compare with those outputs, such as the WARM model, or any differences in those models or those programs?
Let's see. I don't think the STARS uses that. The sustainability tracking and reporting system uses STARS to make greenhouse gas equivalents. I may be wrong, Mark. Do you know for sure?
Yeah, whether STARS uses WARM, that's a good question. Let me do a little digging right now while the webinar is still going on and see if I can get to the bottom of that.
Okay. Also, an attendee mentioned that California's greeneducation.us is also accredited, and they could be implemented in other states.
That's an excellent point, actually. The National Standards Certification Board recently accredited that group, and you're right, greeneducation.us offers education courses that I'm actually teaching in next month. I probably should have cut a good plug for Judy Gregory's great work in California.
Could you provide a little more information on the SSM graduate program you mentioned?
I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't get that.
No, this is Wayne. Someone asked for more information on the SMM graduate program that was mentioned earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. That must have been for me.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was for Jack.
I thought Jack and I are sitting here waiting for each other to answer. It is in the early stages. It's not even, I guess it's unfair to say it's even developed. It's in the early stages of development here, and I would hope to see something within the next year that would be at our college, a 12 credit program. Eventually, I'd love to see kind of a master's degree level, but I certainly have to engage the faculty and others here first. So I encourage that person to stay in touch with me as we further develop that opportunity here at ESF in Syracuse. And it may also include an online option, which I'm pushing for.
Have any colleges convened SMM product redesign roundtables, webinars, or discussions to link recyclers with product designers and manufacturers? If not, those could be great roles for colleges who help in finding local solutions for difficult to recycle materials.
I agree, Wayne. We've done that here at the university for a number of years, where we actually use business school professors to host at their boardroom over in the business school corporate leaders from the Boulder Valley area who have hard to recycle or non-recycled or other wasteful products that they can't get recycled. They bring them onto campus. We meet over wine and cheese. We discuss the different aspects of the product, and we turn the students loose on seeing if we can get some solutions to them. I think that's a great opportunity for students to work with off-campus agencies and companies to design for recyclability.
Have any colleges focused on developing local markets for reused, recycled, or composted materials? This is a huge need given the recent initiatives by China to tighten the quality for recyclables and bans on specific materials.
I can comment on a couple of projects that we're working with schools nationally on. One of them is with a closed loop process for LDPE film, where we've identified the Petoskey company out of Petoskey, Michigan, that uses film, baled dry film sent to them where they pay the shipping, they pay for a price per pound, and then they're able to make a bag that's made out of 70% post-consumer film that we're able to buy back through Grainger at a cost lower than virgin plastic bags. There are a number of schools that have participated in that. I know that particular company would like to see more uptake from schools around the country. The other project that a number of schools are working on that I'm familiar with is marketing their high-grade fiber into end-use materials that can be further recycled. Some schools, including mine, that have not gone to single stream for at least the academic and administrative waste streams, which are still fiber rich, are keeping their fiber separate from their containers, and as a result are marketing those materials separately for a higher material price, commodity pricing. But rather than see those sorted white ledger or sorted office paper being downcycled to toilet tissue, we want to see a higher and best use into, for instance, blue books or essay exams. We've done some research, found out from higher ed that they're not going anywhere. The faculty members still use the essay exam books as a tried and true method of judging students' proficiency, but they can be recycled again and again as office paper. So those are two examples I'm directly familiar with and involved in that try and develop local markets that schools can hopefully drive with the sheer volume of valuable materials coming off campus.
It'd be great if we were able to develop a database of others, Jack. I think this is a really important question that was asked because it implies that, and rightfully so, that institutions, particularly big academic institutions, can help through these type of efforts do some market development by leveraging the heft that they have in communities. I think that's a great role to play.
Great.
With that, I just wanted to point out, Wayne, if you got this, I put a link to you on the STARS technical manual. You can just download this directly from the STARS website, and you'll notice, if you're interested, this is for the question about whether WARM is used. WARM is referenced, and I thought it was. I just wanted to be sure. So it seems like WARM is embedded within the STARS criteria. There's 3 sections in STARS that relate to waste and materials. But it's a really good question, and I myself wonder how embedded it really is, and that's why I think there's opportunity for us to help inform STARS, the next version of STARS.
Okay, are there any efforts to work with medical campuses as they face different obstacles than the main campuses?
Certainly, many colleges and universities have medical facilities that contribute to the waste shed. Here at my college campus, we don't necessarily have a medical facility on campus, but the laboratories that we work with are generating many of the same types of materials and packaging waste that medical facilities deal with. One project that we're particularly challenged with is getting better cooperation from vendors to reduce the amount of waste imported to campus or increase the recyclability of that. We're working, for instance, on nitrile gloves right now. One particular company claims they're recyclable and are offering a take-back program that unfortunately all the schools have to pay for completely. It's just an example of the kinds of problem materials or hard to recycle materials that laboratories and medical facilities are challenged with. I expect some extended producer responsibility resolution to be reached in the near future with this company in particular. We'll make sure we share those results if applicable to other colleges and universities around the country. I'm not sure if there are other examples from the audience, or Mark, if you have anything to comment on medical institutions. It's definitely a tough ball of wax.
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay. Have any colleges researched the financing of reuse, recycling, and composting infrastructure?
Nothing that I'm too familiar with that I can put my hands on readily. Although I think the schools that are putting that kind of pre-cycling work together, whether it's the reusable books, clothing, and appliances during move out, or a ROSE project, which the acronym is Reusable Office Supplies Exchange, are examples that are really taking off on college campuses. So I have not seen a how-to guide. There are a couple of good resources that we have in our directory section of the website that link to some zero waste toolkits that have been produced by colleges and universities that you might be able to access from our page.
Part of the purpose of this webinar is not only to share information with you, but we also wanted to see if we could tease out information from attendees either now or afterwards. And this is one of those questions. I think it was a good question. And so in addition to what Jack said, I would be interested too to learn more about institutions that have researched the finances behind this. And that's why I said that's one of those research topics that I think is important for academia to play a larger role. And this gets back to the LCA work as well. But we need that data as we go out and make arguments for the sustainable management approaches to our materials. That's key. So if you know of institutions that have done financial analyses of these solutions, I think it's important, Jack, for them to share it with the campus council, and we can add that to the data that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just reaching out to us with the email that you see on the screen, campuscouncil@nrcrecycles.org, goes to a number of us. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here. Do many colleges serve as clearinghouses for local reuse, recycling, and composting services in their areas, like the San Jose Center for the Development of Recycling?
I don't know about you, Mark, but I'm familiar with a couple of clearinghouses that are organized nationally. The Pollution Prevention Clearinghouse is organized regionally around the country at colleges and universities, and they focus on pollution prevention predominantly, but that's an example of a federally funded network of colleges and universities that we're frankly trying to reach out to more closely. We have the survey of sustainable materials management research that have been targeted to some of those schools. Let's see.
Yeah, while you're thinking, Jack, I don't have a direct answer to that either, but what immediately came to mind, again, I think it's a great role. Unless somebody would argue otherwise with good arguments, I think it's a great role for some academic institution to play. Not all would be able to do that, but the organization that immediately came to mind, and I don't know, they're more of a nonprofit, but they might engage academic partners in this, is the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, based in New Hampshire. And again, there might be somebody on the call that's more familiar with them, but I've always been impressed with, they almost act like a clearinghouse or a cooperative. And I wonder if they've explored this. So that might be a group we want to reach out to, Jack.
Great point, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, I would welcome input from others in the audience that are familiar with schools that are serving their community or state as clearinghouses.
Okay. This question has to do with finding markets for lab pack materials. Not sure if that you guys can answer that.
I'm assuming this means sustainable options for lab pack materials. Yeah. Boy, I just went blank. I was working with my environmental health and safety director on this, and I think he's done some research on it. So again, I don't know how we do this, Wayne, but these are the kind of things, if there's a way of getting back to people, this is one that I can look into and somehow get back to the individual that had this question.
Yep.
It's a really good one, and I know it's a huge area for academia. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, the attendee report does have the questions on it, so I will forward that to you, and you can follow up.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, so I think we're out of questions here, and we're just about out of time, so we're going to close it down here. Again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Mark and Jack, for providing some great information. And I'm sure this will lead to more involvement with this campus council. So we'll hope you'll join us for next month's webinar, and please visit the NRC and RMC websites for schedule updates. And have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks all.
Thanks.